the panel discussion. And I'm very pleased to have three distinguished panel members, one of whom I know very well. I will introduce him later on. The first panel member is Professor Engineer Dr. Noor Kamaria Nordin, Associate Director of ESC Malaysia. Welcome, Professor Kamaria.
Thank you, Professor.
We have Professor Engineer Dr. Ramesh Singh, Dean Faculty of Engineering, University Technology, Brunei. Professor Ramesh, are you around? And then we have Professor Engineer Dr. Muhammad Shuhaimi Abdul Rahman, Director of Center for Alumni Relations, UKM, Malaysia. Professor Shuhaimi. All right. Let me now introduce them briefly before we have this discussion. All of them are distinguished and highly accomplished in their own rights. If I read their CV, it will take up the rest of the time. So I will not do that. Rather, what I will do is very briefly introduce them. Professor Noor Kamaria received her BSc degree in electrical engineering with a major in telecommunication from University of Alabama, Tuscaloosa, USA in 1987. And later on, eventually, of course, she got her master's and PhD, and she became professor in 2012 in UPM. Currently, Professor Kamaria is the Dean of the Faculty of Engineering. She has more than 25 years of experience and a lot of research and a lot of fundraising. I will not go through the details. So she is currently the Associate Director of Electrical Engineering branch at the Engineering Accreditation Department of Malaysia. She's also the Vice President of Malaysia Society of Engineering and Technology. Our second panel member is Professor Dr. Engineer Ramesh Singh. Professor Ramesh is a good friend of mine. He's a colleague of mine at University of Malaya, but currently he's on a secondment to the University Technology Brunei. He's now the Dean there and the Senior Professor at the Faculty of Engineering. Professor Ramesh got his PhD in Advanced Materials in 1997 from the University of Sunderland, UK. He also received his undergraduate's degree from there. He served as the Associate Director for Engineering Accreditation Department of the Board of Engineers Malaysia for 2 consecutive terms. And he has a lot of experience in research, in research grants. And again, it will take a lot of time for me to go through. I just highlight some of those. He has been a chartered engineer and professional engineer with the UK and Australia. He has a lot of consultation efforts that he was involved in with the industry. We have the third panel member is Professor Engineer Dr. Shuhaimi Abdul Rahman. Professor Shuhaimi is the Director of Center for Alumni Relations, UKM, University Kebangsaan, Malaysia. And we are really pleased to have these distinguished panel members today. And let us start with our panel discussion. So each of the panel members will have at least 20 minutes, I can guarantee, because we have a lot of time today. And I would like to request each panel member to focus on the discussion that was made just now by Professor Fu, and also the earlier presentation, if you had some time to go through. In addition to that, we would welcome very much your own views on the whole issue of accreditation, quality assurance, et cetera, et cetera. So first I will go to Professor Kamaria. Professor Kamaria. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Prof. Hasib. Assalamualaikum and a very good afternoon to all of you who are here. I can see that I'm missing my two other panels, missing my friends, but they'll probably be joining us later on. Yeah, I managed to listen to the second presenter of the technical session 2, but did not quite manage the first one. So I only can comment on the second and the third presentation. But nevertheless, it is all about accreditation, and it's all about, I think in the morning it's more about outcome, graduate attributes, and problem solving, CPS, yeah, complex problem solving. And I'm very much interested what Dr. Fu was presenting just now. But I was surprised that this is the first time that I heard that the design of the curriculum is more into focusing on what student needs rather than what Washington Accords need. It's not based on the requirement of Washington Accord, but more on the needs of the industry and the needs of the student. Correct, Dr. Fu? Yeah, so I'm pleased because that's what we've been doing all this while. It's just that when Washington Accord comes in, we know that we have to conform to certain, requirement and everything. But we have been doing that since forever. Yeah, since the beginning of the century. That's what we've been doing. We've been producing CEOs, we've been producing general managers, and we've been producing a lot of senior engineers. Yeah, so without conforming to anything, because we know we're doing it right. So I think that's what Dr. Fu is trying to say. Yeah, but I also like to bring up the idea of flexible engineering, flexible curriculum. Yeah, I think that is what missing because we are still focused on, focus on certain area of engineering rather than making it broad-based, making it very fundamental. Because if the fundamental is strong, we can always go to whatever area the student, the learning curve can help them adopt and adapt, yeah, to whatever circumstances, whatever future that they're having in the future after they graduated. So I think that's another thing that we can all look at on flexible curriculum, apart from accreditation per se. Yeah. Is there another panel I can pass and then come back? Yes, I'll stop at that. Prof. Hasib, over to you.
Yes, I always forget to unmute my mic. Thank you, Professor Kamaria. We will come back to you. It's open now. We have Professor Ramesh and Professor Suhaimi. Ramesh, my good old friend, are you there? Is Professor Ramesh here?
Actually, he is not present. I think our panel discussions were supposed to start from 3, so maybe that's why. Because I think that's the reason.
Okay. If Professor Suhaimi, are you around? If not, I'll go to some question that I have seen.
There is one question.
Okay, so there is one question. Let me read that. That is for Dr. Fu. Given that Singapore is a small country and not known to have extensive engineering and manufacturing activities, for example, compared with other Asian countries like China, is it a challenge to find collaborators from industry? Very relevant question.
Okay, maybe I'll take a step backwards. In Singapore, when we plan our degree curriculum, we have to work very closely with quite a number of agencies in Singapore, the Ministry of Education, our Economic Development Board, to actually have a sense of the demands in the market. So that's number one. And the next thing that we need to do is we also have to look at the kind of skill set that the industry needs. And that's what I meant by these are the drivers to help us to plan our curriculum, to make sure that we have talents that will be able to flow through the industry. And one of the unfortunate things for Singapore, it is a very small little country. We do not have natural resources. The only kind of resources that we have are with 2 legs. So we need to make sure that all of them are skilled enough to actually enter a certain particular jobs. So far for Singapore, just to share in terms of the industry, while we do not have a very big manufacturing base, like for example, China, but we do have some of the key, some of their research centers, they are based here. So we also have some of the key players, for example, in the manufacturing industry, producing some of the products. We probably cannot produce for the whole world, but it's substantial enough that just to give you a sense of flavor, in terms of GDP, manufacturing probably takes up to 20 to 25% of our portfolio. So it is a very small compared to the whole world, but it is substantial enough for us to actually look into the engineering requirements. Hopefully that helps to answer some of the questions. I guess the different countries will have a little bit of different context. That's why when I mentioned when we plan our degree a little bit differently, it's because we have to target our industry very well. Because if we don't produce a skill set that they need, then the companies have to do another layer of training before they can be functional. So we bring them into our curriculum for that particular purpose. And just to share, I'm not trying to say that the Washington Accord not important. It is important, but for us, my primary objective is to look at my students will be able to get jobs. And of course, at the end of the day, if I do everything correctly, most of the things should have been met with the Washington Accord. So I don't aim for Washington Accord and hopefully my students get jobs. I go the other way. I make sure they get jobs and make sure that it maps. So that was what I'm trying to say. So just in case there is some misunderstanding.
One question. Okay, Taslima Khatun. Yeah, you can tell you or ask your question. No problem. Would you please unmute yourself, Taslima Khatun?
Yes, thank you so much. Arranging such a nice seminar. Thank you to the organizer and all presenters. I am Taslima Khatun, Assistant Professor, Community Nutrition Department, Bangladesh University of Health Science. I think we all participants are benefited by organizing such an excellent seminar. And when we develop our OBE for our curriculum and syllabus, I think we will be benefited by your provided excellent presentation and documents. Thank you all.
I think by this time, we already have our two other distinguished panel members, Professor Ramesh Singh and Professor Shuhaimi. I introduced both of you already. And Ramesh, my good old friend, how are you doing?
Okay, great. Prof. Hasim, nice to see you. And Prof. Kamaria too.
Yeah, same here.
All right. Professor Kamaria already started the discussion. So if Ramesh, you are ready to go, so please move ahead.
Yeah, I think I joined the morning session. I just came in, I was out from another meeting. The session afternoon, I take it all the presenters have presented their keynote. Or we have another presenter, right?
We don't have
unfortunately, Professor Hashmi cannot make it due to some technical issue. So Dr. Fu already presented and we had some ongoing discussion on it. So if you could make your comments on Dr. Fu's or any other issues, because you have a lot of experience with accreditation. So please go ahead. It's a free thing for you.
Sure, Prof. Asit. Okay, this morning session, there was two presenters that given a talk on outcome-based. First one on the differences between the old and the new scheme proposed by Washington Accord. And there were some queries there, and I think the professor from UKM, he has answered well. The second presenter was on complex problem solving and complex engineering activities. There were some queries there as well. If I recall, for the first presenter, there was one question about if student failing the program outcome, can they graduate? I think that was one of the question being raised, and of course the presenter has given his view. So basically, I just want to add on that basis. I mean, the program outcomes are really, if we look at the Washington Accord, these are the outcomes we expected the graduates to have or to be able to demonstrate at the time they graduate. And of course, each university or each faculty will have their own model in how they assess the program outcomes. And generally, in order to pass or graduate from a program, it all depends on the CGPA, the GPA, and so on, the traditional way of how the university would decide if somebody can pass the particular program. The outcome-based approach is really used to help program to institute CQI, and we use the program outcome as the basis. We don't use the CGPA to say whether or not a particular graduate has demonstrated a particular outcome, because the CGPA system look at the accumulation of all the assessment, but program outcome, they are specific. So these are specific attributes that the graduates must demonstrate at the time of graduation. So generally, if a particular student fail to demonstrate achievement of a particular program outcome, then basically there must be a CQI instituted by the program or by the faculty or by the school in order to address the shortcoming, because we must understand that it is the model that we pick. I mean, how we assess the particular students. And of course, we have a lot of modules or courses that we can select in order to decide which of those outcomes that we want to take as the final attainment. So to me, the program will need to decide if, because this is the model adopted by the program. So the program will then need to institute a CQI, because if there is an accreditation, and if, let's say, the panel finds out that the particular student fails a particular program outcome and able to graduate, then the next thing the program needs to highlight is that what the program has done in order to address this issue, you know, because the students can graduate, because it is the CGPA or that decides that whether or not a student can pass or a student can fail. It is not the program outcome, right? And we need to understand that the outcome-based model really is there to help us to improve the particular program. But having said that, the onus goes back to the program in order to decide, okay, the particular student have not met the program outcome. So what would be that gap, that remedial action that the program wants to put in place so that the student will be able to demonstrate those outcomes. So maybe the student may have to come back and do a short course for 2 weeks or something like that. So I think that's my take on that. The second one on complex problem solving and complex engineering activities. There was a question raised about what is the difference between complex problem and difficult problem, and another one is I can't recall what's the other one. So I think
high level problem, Prof.
High level, high level problem. Okay, yeah. In fact, people have also asked what is the difference between Bloom's taxonomy and the complex problem. You know, so I think people need to understand that the distinguishing factor or criteria for the three different accords, the Sydney Accord, Dublin Accord, and the Washington Accord, is really on the problems that we give to students to solve. For engineering based, it has to be complex, and complex because in order to help everyone, all the signatories, to understand what constitute complex, and that's why we have the so-called criteria that WP1 to WP7 and EA1 to EA5 to guide people like you and me in order to fulfill those requirements. So it's not so much about difficult problem. I mean, you can give a very difficult problem and you can define difficult as something like a student will, will have to engage with theory and they have to use specific tools in order to derive a particular answer. So it's not so much about trying to define what it is a difficult or what's high level. I mean, you can give a simple problem, but the problem has to be complex, where there must be iteration, there must be justification, there must be engagement with theory. So I think we need to understand the difference between what Washington Accord wants the program to demonstrate, as well as what academic staff would want to put into the program, whether it's a difficult problem or whether it's a high-level problem. I mean, that's my take on the discussion. I'm sorry I missed Dr. Fu's presentation, but maybe Prof. Kamaria or Prof. Shuhaimi can chip in on the topic.
It's all right, Professor Ramesh. So we will come back again. There will be more rounds, so please stand by. Let me go to Professor Shuhaimi. It's your turn, sir.
Prof, I think you mute. Shuhaimi, I think you are muted.
Okay, am I audible?
Yes.
Yes. You seem to be muted once again.
Shuhaimi, I think you are muted.
Is having some technical problem there, I think.
Yes, I think so. We can, Dr. El Sheikh, would you like to intervene?
Sorry. Assalamu alaikum. Okay, so while we are waiting to receive back Prof. Shuhaimi, of course, I'm not that experienced, and I cannot compare myself with the panel members here. But maybe I can share some of my experience on OBE accreditation and whatever we are discussing today. I had the experience to be program coordinator for some time, for about 2 years in the International Islamic University, Malaysia. And I think everyone who was in that position knows and understands how tough that job is. It requires and it involves a lot of work, a lot of documentation. Maybe that's the dark side of what we are discussing today. There's a lot of work associated with, the implementation of OBE and trying to implement all these recommendations from Washington Accord. But of course, there's also bright side. I would say that I have learned a lot from that experience. One of the advantages that I had the chance to meet very knowledgeable people like Prof. Ramesh, Prof. Shuhaimi. Maybe this is the first time I meet with Prof. Kamaria, but really I have met with very bright people, and I have learned a lot from them. One of the very good practices that we have been doing at that time, and this is one of the requirements from the Malaysian Accreditation Council, is that programs have to conduct benchmarking visits. So we have been around visiting other universities in Malaysia, and even sometimes international universities, comparing programs, because the implementation of OBE and the implementation of Washington Accord is not like a clear cut, it's just a general framework. And each university, they have to think about, they sometimes even have their own interpretations, and of course, they have their own implementations. And it is really a good practice to have these benchmarking visits, comparing different programs, comparing the curriculum, comparing student achievements, comparing how to calculate the attainment, and so on and so forth. And whatever you have in mind and whatever understanding that you have about OBE, you will see that there are even more, many more other implementations, many more other understandings, and so on. I wish we could have Prof. Shuhaimi back, because one of the very good experiences I remember from these benchmarking visits.
I think we will wait for Prof. Shuhaimi. In the meantime, I think I will go back a few more rounds to Professor Kamaria.
Sure. Okay.
Would you like to add more?
Sure. Did I cut you short, Prof. El-Sheikh?
No, it's fine. I'll come back again. I will have the chance again.
Okay.
We are here to hear you.
So maybe I can just share some of the model, that we have in OBE implementation, because like Dr. El-Sheikh was saying just now, it's up to the interpretation, but the framework is there. The basis for us to interpret is there, and benchmarking is one of the way, to see, and we can see that some university, the model is on culminating, like Prof. Ramesh was saying just now, and some are on overall. It's comprehensive. It's like every semester, every course is they have to look for the attainment for each one of them, and some are on sampling. So there's a many model that you can use, but as you go along, as you get the culture, you can implement to the best of your faculty what is best for them. So because not everybody can be maybe some university thought is best to give this kind of OBE thing and Washington Accord thing to experienced lecturers, so that they can sample student or sample courses. But in Malaysia, we are still very much into comprehensive and culminating. We are not into sampling yet. That's probably very, very high end, like ABET kind of. In US, many are doing sampling. They even just use fundamental exam, the FE, the fundamental exam, as part of their reporting of OBE attainment. Outcome attainment. So that's what I noticed when we go around for accreditation, because as associate director, we go around as head of delegation. So we saw a lot of methods, but new university tend to follow comprehensive, because they learn from their mentors, like from old university, like UPM, UM. So because they learn from us, so they may not have the idea of transforming the way they do things yet. So but that is on accreditation and OBE approach that they have. But maybe I can touch again on the complex problem solving, like what somebody asked in the morning. I think I responded on in the chat. One question asking, is it enough if we do for PO1, if we do just P1 plus 1 of other element of CPS, right? In Malaysia, we understood some as at least 2. Yeah, so it's a WP1 if we have to address PO1 to PO7, meaning we have to, PO1 of Washington Accord, right? The 12 POs. If we are to address PO1 to PO7, we have to address WP1 plus at least 2 others, if not 7 of them, if not all. Yeah. So that's what our understanding is. That's why I said to our in Malaysian context, we do 1 plus 2 at least. So that is on CPS. Maybe I can, supplement what Prof. Ramesh was saying about what is high level, what is complex problem, what is a high difficulty. As long as it is hot, require higher order thinking, require creativity in students, it will cover the element. Like Dr. Fu was saying, you don't have to, you don't have to memorize, you don't have to really focus on the element, but the element will be there. That's why when we go into accreditation, I say, do not religiously follow the element, because the element will be found in the questions. If the complexity of the problem will be found in the question, you as the panel will find that out, even though your auditor may not be able to show it to you. Yeah, so that's why. Even without thinking, we are doing all the complexity thing. We are doing all the complex problem, even without thinking, because that's the requirement of engineering. Yeah, even before the element was introduced, university previously, all lecturers are doing that already. Yeah, so the easiest, our rule of thumb, yeah, as I was dean, yeah, I corrected, yeah, I was former dean. I'm no longer dean now. Yeah. When I was dean, I always told my staff that you just have to worry if you have Socrates kind of questions, it will end up being, if you have a what if kind of question, it's always complex because it requires a different thinking. It is not calculation based, because calculation based is all procedural. You can calculate anything. It may be difficult, but it may not be complex. Yeah, it can be easy, like Ramesh was saying, but it could be complex. Yeah, because it's your response to that one student response is different from the other student response. So complex problem require a lot of thinking, and it is not a one solution thing. Yeah, so it is a world problem, solving a real world authentic problem, like Dr. Fu was emphasizing just now. Yeah, so maybe I can stop at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent. I think by this time we have Professor Suhaimi with us. Professor Suhaimi, can you hear us?
Sorry, sir, for the inconvenience. I have problem with my microphone.
No, it's fine.
Yeah. Then I
Please
change. Okay, so I have to change the device. Okay, back to the description that elaborated by Prof. Ramesh. I think it is explicit about I think the PO assessment is reflected to the academic management system. It's not measure the student performance. Okay, in term for the student to be graduated, it must fulfill the what requirement by university. Okay, and OBE and etc. Everything is about how we want to establish the robust academic system in order to produce a holistic students. It's what I call that as a platform to how we establish our attributes to identify them, which is to meet the what I call as the aspirations of university, at the same time to fulfill the inspirations of the stakeholders. Okay, so it must be developed. I mean, the academic management system must be developed, structured, and systematic in order to produce the graduate which highly sought by the industries. Okay, so so it comprising how we assess the student, which is reflective which is reflective to their performance, and okay, from the result, how we used to improve the program. So everything's OBE is about to improve the program, to establish the program to be what we call relevance and meet the current demands. Okay, so in order to produce students, in order to be the student graduated, okay, so it must be fulfill what has been stipulated by the university policy, which is the CGPA, and there is a what cut off value in order to student to be graduated. Okay, so for the complex problems, CPS and CEA, complex problem solution and complex problem solving and complex engineering, what I call CPS and CEAN. Okay. Okay, sorry. Allah Akbar. Okay, I think this both is suitable to measure in what I call senior years during their study times. Okay, there are two platforms that we can use to measure the attributes of POs, which are having the complex in the statements. I think 7, 8 POs related the CPS and CA, and all these complex related POs should be assessed in a platform. Okay. All right, in a suitable platform by means of capstone project or final year projects. Okay, if these both courses or platform are not covering all these 8 POs, so we need to have additional courses, for example, microprocessor or etc., which having the same platform, which is having the same platform to measure. I mean, the platform is the standard of the assessment is quite similar to the capstone or FIP. Okay, then we can say that it is suitable to measure this kind of the POs. So meaning that the complex CPS and CEA cannot merely assessed in any courses, cannot be assessed in the examination. It must be assessed in a suitable platform which comprising all the indications for the CEA and CPS as split by the what I call IAE articles. Okay, all right. Okay, or Washington Accord manuals. Okay, okay, that's all from me right now.
Thank you, Professor Shuhaimi, for the time being. I have a question here from Dr. Muhammad Mustafizur Rahman. This question is for Professor Ramesh and Dr. Fu. Let me read this. May I know, please, about the number of credits and hours practicing for the industrial training?
Dr. Fu, maybe you can go first.
Okay. For SIT, if the students go out for a year, it's 30 credits out of the 240 credits in terms of the training. I know that we try to convert into the notional hour, it seems like it's too low, but we believe that when their students are working out there, there will be learning portion, there is something that's repetitive. So a long duration is actually beneficial for us to actually get the student immersed into that particular area. So hopefully that answers the question.
You're saying, Dr. Fu, for your institution, they do a 1-year industrial attachment, is it?
For a 4-year degree program, we do a 1 year. We do have other programs that's a 3-year. For those, they'll go out for 8 months.
So if your program is a 1 year in that 4 years, you are not on a Washington Accord degree platform, is it?
Which one again?
So your engineering degree programs are not on the Washington Accord platform?
For the 4-year degree program?
Yeah.
Okay, for the 4-year degree program, maybe I will share with you my slide again. Do you mind? Sorry.
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I missed it, because if you said if it's a 1-year training out of the 4 years, so it's a 3-year solid teaching. So because Washington Accord requires at least 8 full semesters.
Yeah. So this is the, we work on the trimester basis. So we have 3 blocks per year rather than a semester basis. So we are stealing the holiday break from the students. So we have.
So that's what, 12 weeks? It's a 12 weeks.
We have 13 weeks.
Semester.
Yeah, yes. So we have a longer duration. So over here, we have 8 teaching trimesters and 3 of them are out. Does that help? Does that answer your question? Thank you.
Okay, so that means you on your degree are accredited by Engineers Singapore, right?
Yes, that's
yeah.
correct.
Okay, so I understand. Okay, that's how you mitigate the you are able to get the 1 year attachment. Okay.
Yeah.
I think in Malaysia,
holiday from students.
Yeah. I think in Malaysia, Prof. Kamaria can confirm with me as well, because I was also the former.
Similar. We have
similar,
doing something similar. Yeah.
Yes, a similar model kan. Okay. For Malaysia, according to the EAC standard, the latest standard, the minimum is 8 weeks training, whereby 2 weeks is equivalent to 1 credit. To a maximum of 6 credits. So 6 credit maximum is a 12 weeks industrial training. And they normally do this during the short break, because in Malaysia it's typically 2 long semester per year. So they would normally do it after they have completed the 6th semester. So in the 3rd year, before they go into the 4th year, so they have a short period, short gap there. So during that period, normally they do the industrial attachment. But I think in the Malaysia context, the whole idea of industrial attachment, I mean, of course, industry, we also get a lot of feedback, just like you, Dr. Fu. Industry would always want students to stay longer in the industry, because in 8 weeks, they can't learn much. Or even in 12 weeks. But we have limited it to 8 weeks minimum to a maximum of 12 weeks. The whole idea is exposure. I mean, under the pretext of exposure to professional practice, so that students be able to understand what they have learned so far. And when they go out into the industry, they are able to apply these, not really apply, but rather to learn firsthand from the industry what is being implemented, what are the theories that they learn are being considered in, say, engineering processes and so on. In Brunei context, in Brunei, we are in the process of getting the accreditation from the Engineering Council. And we also have industrial training. We call it Experience Plus. I'm the Dean of the faculty now. And in our Experience Plus, it's also 8 weeks. And students go to industry. And the whole idea is just for professional exposure. And then they come back to the program, and then they will continue with their final year, and they will undertake a final year project. Okay, and during that time in the industry, at least in Brunei, I have instituted a structured program for the students. So it's not like they just go to industry and they be able to do whatever the industry want. Part of the attachment in industry, we also ask students to look at sustainable development, health and safety. They will have to come back and submit an assignment on the aspect of sustainability as well as health and safety. So they need to identify processes or where the industry that they attach in, where they have implemented the 17 SDGs. And part of it, they will have to do interview, they will have to do a video and submit a short report or technical paper on the matter. And if, let's say, the industry does not implement sustainable development, if they can't see any of these instituted in the industry, then the student will identify how the industry can easily implement some of the SDGs in their processes, and they will then submit the report, and of course the industry will also get the report, and it's up to the industry whether they want to take it up or not. But as far as the student per se, In fact, even before the version 3 of the IEA document came out, I have already instituted this in the program in UTB. I have from the start when I joined here, actually I'm on secondment, I'm still with University of Malaya. When I came here in 2019, 2020, I came full-time. 2019, I was here for my sabbatical. During that time, I have really pushed for the sustainable development to be incorporated. And I'm happy to see that eventually Washington caught up with it, and they have now incorporated that as well, the SDGs. Yeah, I think having 1 year training is always good, but I think I think programs will need to identify. I'm sure in your case, because you can do it for 1 year because you have three semesters per year. And so it's easy for you to institute that long duration. The other thing is that we must always be careful with industrial training, because sometimes the student don't get the right exposure. They are not supervised by professionals, rather they are supervised by technicians and things like that. So they are not exposed to really professional practice. So I don't know how, Dr. Fu, in your case, what's the how you monitor this?
Okay, maybe I will try to share a little bit. I did not share something about our student profile. 95% of our students actually come from our polytechnic systems, which means if they have not joined the university, they're already work ready. So they have done a work exposure. So we are not going to send them for another work exposure. So we want them to be actually using the industry as a platform to bring it up to the next level. And I mentioned in our internship, right, we call it IWSP. The company has to post a JD, the job description. It has to be approved by our program directors. It has to meet certain requirements. They must appoint a suitable technical person. There will be another technical person here to make sure that they follow through the JDs. And during the 1 year internship, we don't leave them alone. We bring them back every month. We negotiate to bring them back every month to actually provide, training to actually bring up them to the next level. For example, design thinking. How do we deal with, for example, managing meetings? Because when they're in school, right, they are discipline. They are getting a lot of the discipline content. Now, when you go there, they start to realize they need to have other skills. We bring them back and we check in with them and make sure that they progress. For companies who try to be a little bit try to abuse the system, right? It'll be out of our database very quickly. And because it is not a place, a position, the company has to actually surface in and is competitive. The student choose, the company choose. After a while, there will be a market. It goes to equilibrium. The seniors will tell the juniors, don't go this company. So the company is also held at ransom. So to a certain extent, if they want to have the early talent, they will actually treat the student well. And so far, I think we have been quite successful. Again, also different country, different context, because we have the kind of partnership model. It kind of worked for us, but I can't say it can be transplanted easily everywhere. So that's something that I was trying to share as one of the model. It is not the model. It just happened that it works for us.
Yeah, I totally agree. So I mean, for people out there, I think you need to have a structured training program, not just sending students out to the industry just because you want to fulfill a particular requirement. As what Dr. Fu mentioned, I think there must be a purpose. I think that's very important. There must be monitoring. There must be purpose. There must be assessment. And to us, especially in UTB, we assess as much of the complex engineering activities, because some of these can be easily embedded within the assessment, and students will have to demonstrate those attributes. So I don't know, Prof. Kamaria and Dr. Shuaimi, if you want to add on to the industrial training aspect.
Okay, Prof. Ramesh, I think it's the practice is similar in other universities, even in Malaysia. The durations for internship is about a minimum 8 weeks, and the location is before the student enter the final year. Okay, but this not the limitations. Okay, has anyone know about the fruits educations? Okay, so it's about how to strengthen the engagement between the students and the industries. Okay, so it's only about 8 weeks for the internship, but the collaboration can be set earlier. It's depend to the how we manage the academic management system. And some universities send the student to industries at year 1 during the semester break. Okay, so they are using full learning hours even in the semester break. Okay, so they start send the student until the year 1 and since year 1 until the year 3. So by the time they can assess where is the suitable place to send the students. I mean, for example, if the student, if that company is, I think, take for granted for any opportunity for the student, they will switch to other companies, and this continuously until the students start for the true internship program at year 3. So meaning that when they start doing their internship, they are placed at the right company. Okay, so because there is what we call the assessment during the year 1 to identify the suitable places for them to do internship programs. Okay, so meaning that even the EC proposed 8 weeks for internship, but it's depend to the how the university setting their curriculums and creativity on their system. Okay.
Thank you, Professor Shuaimi. I think that's a very interesting discussion on the student internship. This is always an issue that that comes to the forefront, how long we should expose our students, and it's difficult to manage. So it will depend on the context, on the local context, etc. Professor Kamaria, would you like to add anything on this very important issue?
Just a little bit. It's good to see that Dr. Fu's university SIT has this ecosystem, because the location he's surrounded by industry. Yeah, the way the university is set up, and that's why he can manage that. And we have one university who managed to do that because his Petronas, it is Petronas, yeah, because and all companies like going after their students, so they can manage a similar longer period of internship. But many universities nowadays, we know the importance of industry, and we have industrial advisory panel already, but at the same time we want to make use of the internship, the short-term internship, and for continuous collaboration. So the way we collaborate is the student will come back with an industry problem, working with their final year project. So many universities are doing that now. So, but not everybody got the chance to bring back the project. But good students and good places managed to do that. We continue our student collaboration through final year project with many industry nowadays.
Thank you, Professor Kamaria. Let me remind the audience once again. So please feel free to ask your question and use the raise hand option also to write your question there, if you can. To continue, Professor Kamaria, I have to come back to you because you started with a very important word, flexibility.
Yes.
In the curriculum. Okay. So how the accreditation bodies can allow us flexibility?
Yeah, I wonder myself. Yeah, because remember Google said they don't need paper. They don't need a certificate. They don't need diploma for somebody to work. If you have this inclination, if you have this, you can learn by yourself. So so that's why. But we may not be there yet, especially in Asian country. We may not be there. We may not be there yet to offer this. But we can think along that line. We especially having like at least do not call our program any program, just call it a general engineering with a lot of fundamentals, for the first 2 years. Then it's up to them whether they're basic probably engineering very strong fundamental, but at the end of the day, they probably go into big data, they probably go into data science, they probably go into electrical. And we still need all those engineering, but the fundamental is the one that you know, that we can form this potential student to have their own, to make their own, to chart their own path, you know, to chart their own career. So I'm always into that, rather than, you know, like everybody is like going into Bachelor of Photonics Engineering. That's very specific. That is master's or PhD level, you know. So it's good to have broad base, like the 4 branch, the main branches. That's more than enough. But now we step back and relook. Probably we can have this flexi engineering, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. And many universities now, especially in the US, they have this multidisciplinary, you know, where a lot of it's not engineering based. During the fundamentals, it's a lot of economics, it's a lot of computer science, it's a lot of, you know, other than engineering per se. So I think we have to look, you know, maybe Ramesh, you are the dean in UTB. You can start thinking along that line apart from SDG.
Yeah, Prof. Kamaria, I totally agree with you. I mean, as some of you all know, I used to be a very strict panel for mechanical.
Yeah, so we know.
I like to follow by the books. I, you know, strong believer that, you know, if you don't have a particular component in the program, then you don't meet the breadth and depth of the program and so on. But over the years, things have changed, technology advanced and so on. And I tend to agree that some form of flexibility should be there as well. I mean, even in UTB, in the Faculty of Engineering, we are still following the traditional program. But we have flexibility in the sense that students can pick and choose some of the, we call it breadth module or the university module. So some of the breadth module, they can pick and choose from other schools and that is counted towards their CGPA calculation and so on. And I tend to agree with what Prof. Kamaria was saying, that I think student needs to be equipped with more fundamentals, maybe in year 1, year 2. Rather than, you know, going very deep into just the technical or core coverage, because I think at the end of the day, if students be able, because in outcome-based, they need to demonstrate the outcome. Okay, you have a set of outcome, right? Okay, for someone to be qualified as a mechanical engineer, you have a set of outcome that dictates what the mechanical engineer should demonstrate at the end. And if they can demonstrate these towards the end in the 4th year in the form of a capstone design, if our capstone design, for example, or our final year project, because we have these are the culminating, these are the peak of your pyramid. They will need to demonstrate this, and if they can demonstrate this without doubts, they can beat your system, whatever assessment system you put in place, and they can demonstrate they have engaged with the necessary theory, and they are able to articulate the problem, and they are able to justify the solution using proper theory and justification. And they have met the outcome. And that's why in the Brunei context, I push a lot on the outcome, and especially in the design project and in the final year project, because to me, if students are not able to demonstrate the attributes necessary at that level, then their fundamentals are not there. You know, then you have a problem with what you have instituted at the ground level. So I think maybe moving forward, maybe some flexibility should be there. But again, we need to balance with the authority like Washington Accord and what globally people want to have in the program. Of course, when we talk about engineering per se, yeah, I mean, when we talk about traditional, we want to see thermodynamics must be there as a standalone. But you know, thermodynamics can be incorporated in any form. You know, not necessary to have one subject or one module called thermodynamics, for example. And I know some university they combine this. They combine this and like the Australian university, they have all this fancy name at year 1 and year 2. They don't call statics anymore. You know, they call a different name where they combine statics, dynamics, and students are given projects where they will have to demonstrate how they engage with these theories and so on. So Yeah, I think some form of flexibility can be there, but I think in them there should be a guideline of what must be there, like a framework. If not, then you know, you may lose the fundamentals, you know, the core coverage.
Thank you, Professor Ramesh. Talking about Australian experience, I think we have Professor Firoz Alam from RMIT. Would you like to add something to this discussion, Professor Firoz Alam?
Thank you. Good afternoon to everyone. I think Australian main focus, as Professor Ramesh mentioned, that we try our best to get students the fundamental understanding in particularly in the earlier year of the program, first year, second year. And progressively, as they move to third and fourth year, they are now applying this fundamental knowledge into real-world engineering problem-solving issues. And the final proof of this outcome-based learning and the understanding of the comprehensive knowledge in the particular specialization is coming to the final year project. Or sometimes we also call capstone project or professional research project, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. But essentially it is there. So ultimately, if that final year project does not show the comprehensive understanding as per the professional organization or national competency standard, then we have to go back in two things. First of all, our curricula, our pedagogy, and then also we need to look at that our intake system. Is there any loophole there? Is there any other issues there? So these three things we need to look at. But in Australia, intake system is very standard. So therefore, we predominantly look at the curriculum. We look at the pedagogy, that whether we follow these things, you know, their pilferage can be. Not every academic staff understand the outcome-based learning very well. So therefore, even in Australian system, we also have the loophole there. So continuously, we are looking at this. So these are the things you need to look at this overall picture. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Firoz Alam. I see one hand raised by Professor Raisuddin. Professor Raisuddin, can you speak out?
Thank you to the panelists for very fruitful discussion, and special thanks to Prof. Fu Yan. I had been thinking about this university, whatever you have implemented, going beyond this, what we call a Washington Accord, EBET, and all these things, focus on the industry base. So it looks like you have implemented one successfully. Okay. Regarding this outcome-based education, one of the loophole, I asked this question this morning as well. When you have the pass mark of 50%, how do you assure these POs are achieved? I just give a practical example of my own life experience. While I was an undergraduate student, my roommate was a skippy student. He didn't go to the classes and all these things. Before the exam, he will collect the, and generally in our classes, we have to answer 6 questions in the final. And pass mark was 40%. He used to pick 3 questions for each subject. And he used to learn it from me. When we had been in the exam, I would know whether he's going to pass the course or not. Because I already taught these 3 questions, and if these 3 questions are not there, he cannot touch anything. And ultimately, he passed. He's a successful engineer. If you look at the POs, what PO he achieved? He just, I told, why do you strike this? He says, you are targeting first class. For me, I'm targeting pass. Pass is 40%. And I will pass. And I believe still students, there are 30% students of this mentality. And when we are talking of the PO and 50% as the pass mark, this loophole is there. You cannot cover this loophole. We have to come up with different model. And in UIA, last time we came up with one concept, in the final exam, only the HOT will be there, no LOD questions. Then the lecturers started complaining, no, student cannot pass in the final. So I have to go back to the original scheme. Recently, we come up with the model, the final student must pass final if he gets 50% of the final. Again, we have the problem, all students cannot get 50% of the final. So I think the model somewhere has to be fine-tuned to achieve this PO successfully. Otherwise, this loophole will be there, and it is an averaging model. Whatever you do, it is an averaging model. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Raisuddin. Any response to this from any of the panel?
Yeah, maybe I can respond to Prof. Raisuddin. I understand what you are saying. You see, when we look at the program outcome, every courses there are course outcome, and not all the course outcome will be linked to final exams. And likewise, not all program outcomes will also link to final exams. So there must be a system put in place whereby constructive alignment must exist between the teaching, the assessment, and the activities that student needs to demonstrate. So some of the outcome can only be demonstrated through projects and not in final exam. And likewise, we talk about communication skill. It only can be demonstrated through presentation and so on. So in the case of, I can understand, because that's why earlier I mentioned about whether a student failing PO program outcome, can the student pass? The answer is yes, the student can pass if the student gets a CGPA of 2, because that's the university requirement to pass the program. You see, so the outcome-based system is really, we have a system put in place. We tie up every course outcome to a particular assessment, and that assessment must be constructively aligned with activities and assessment. And the program will use these data. They extract this data from the student's achievement, and then they will analyze this data, and then they decide on a CQI approach. If let's say the class overall don't meet a certain percentage, then what would be the CQI for the particular course? And that's what the outcome-based model is about. And as mentioned by Prof. Kamaria, there are various model people can adopt. And it doesn't matter what model that you want to adopt. What is important is that as a program, whatever model you adopt, you need to demonstrate that you are able to determine that gap where students are not able to demonstrate a particular learning outcome, and what would be remedial action to take. So like your story about your friends, yeah, I mean, all students would always target to pass the final exam so that they can pass, and they would target only a couple of questions to take up and so on. And that's fair enough, but the program will have to extract those data, whatever the student has attained. And the program will use those data for CQI purposes.
Okay, just to clarify again, Prof. Ramesh. So for measuring the outcome achievement, not all courses should address this. You can still select few courses that will address this issue. Is that?
Yeah, basically what normally we want to see is that there is CQI in the courses. So at the course level, every lecturer should be familiar with the model that we are adopting in our program, and we carry out CQI at our own level. So at the course level, you can imagine we have a small gear that is rotating. The gear must be rotating. Now all these gears will be linked up into the program, and there's a bigger gear. And we want to see the big gear also rotating. It cannot be still, all right? So at the program level, because we want to finally decide a CQI to be instituted from the top, from the program level. So we then come up with a model from the 40, 50 courses that we offer to our students. How do we want to decide whether or not the 12 program outcome the graduates have demonstrated achievement? So that model will have to be decided by the program. Whether, as Prof. Kamaria said, whether they take culminating, they choose from selected areas and decide. That's totally up to the program to decide. So, but at the course level, at our level, when we teach whatever course, we are expected to carry out this CQI process. This must be done at our level. It's not like we don't bother about what's happening. If not, why we have outcome-based OBE instituted at the course level, right? Why we link up, why we have all the mapping. No point of having mapping just for show. So when we have the mapping at our level, yes, we should have a system in place for us to understand achievement and carry out CQI.
Ramesh, you have triggered interest. Many are putting up their hands now.
So we have a question from Professor Engineer Dr. Zambri Harun.
I think he's
Dr.
one
Harun.
of the presenter, I think, this morning.
Yeah.
Yes. I was one of the presenters.
Oh, you cannot ask. A presenter cannot ask.
No, he can ask.
Okay, go ahead.
It's actually on a different matter, actually. Okay, before I ask this question, I would like to thank Prof. Ramesh for giving clarification on the level of difficulty. I really couldn't answer that question. So thanks for that. And also Prof. Kamaria on, stressing the being flexible and stuff like that, really penalize the IHL when doing the audit. Okay, this is my question actually. Since this is with regard to Dr. Fu from SIT, okay, the question is like this. UKM, recently we have a few MOA with Chinese university. One is NUAA, which is one of the maybe leading institution for aeronautic and astronautic. And another one is Hangzhou Jiangxi University. And because it was MOA and MOU, right? So we able to go to the university and benchmark how they implement their curriculum, their programs. And I got to learn that, their program is not like what we have in Malaysia. I guess it's the same in Brunei and also in Singapore. Their program, the name of the program is like, for example, okay, manufacturing system in maybe AI is very long or something like that. Okay, we don't even know if that is in mechanical or electrical or in electronic. Okay, yet they are in the maybe front, the driving seat of all technologies. Okay, they are in signatory of Washington Accord, and having said that, maybe I would like to ask, maybe now that Dr. Fu is here, because it sounded like when you mentioned about your structure, okay, the university or rather the program received like very high, offer from the industry, like 90%. I saw in the video, and I think I have to be frank here that after 2 months or 3 months, the student graduated. The graduates from UKM, they are nowhere at 80%. Okay, nowhere at 80%. Okay, now that compared to Singapore, SIT are 90% higher. So, having said, the program structure in China, where they don't even call themselves mechanical or electrical, whereby we know this is the particular table to follow for mechanical. There must be the strength of material, there must be thermodynamic, there must be a design or something like that, right? So maybe something like this, Prof. Ramesh, having been in different countries, maybe can share his experience, or anybody else. Thank you.
Yeah, I think Dr. Zambri, in the China's case, just like Malaysia, we have our own autonomy to decide. I know that China, their accrediting body, I think CAST, the China Association for Science and Technology Engineering, something like that, CAST, I think they are a member of a signatory of Washington Accord. Now, just like Malaysia, we have BEM as a member as well. I totally agree. In China, if you really benchmark with China, it's mind-boggling to see the programs and the names they use and so on. It's totally something that we don't see it in Malaysia or any other parts of the world. But having said that, if you understand the Washington Accord the framework, we have what we call the substantial equivalence. So every signatory has that autonomy to decide what they want to implement, but they have the guiding principle, or they got the guidance, like the OBE model, they must have the program outcome, they must demonstrate the CQI, they must have, and so on. So that part of that standard rule is applied in the program, because I have a lot of collaboration with the Chinese university as well. And when I visit them, I always talk about the model that they adopt, and I see the substantial equivalence. So the substantial equivalence they have, but they have a different framework that they adopt. And that's how they can meet the Washington Accord requirements as well. And remember that every country, they are subjected, every signatory are subjected to a 6-year peer review cycle as well. So if they don't meet the Washington Accord requirement, then they will be out of Washington Accord. So as long as they can demonstrate substantial equivalence, then they are fine. Just like EC UK now has moved from, they have changed their system as well. Last time they used to have about 48 to 52 little program outcomes, but now they have revised it to 19, because they realize, I think they have to do assessment with 52 program outcome. I think it's going to be very difficult.
Crazy.
So, yeah, so they have their own system, but they meet the substantial equivalence.
Yeah,
I don't know if other panel wants that.
I can agree to that, because we got this. We recently were asked to evaluate because UTEM, one of the university in Malacca, and also UMP, one in Pahang, they are having this double degree or joint degree program. And yes, they have very exotic name, like Zamri was saying, very exotic name, like you don't know whether it's electrical, electronics, or mechanical, but the fundamental is very strong. We do the benchmarking, we try to map one-to-one, and because if we look at the total, even their total credit is 160 at least. It's a lot. So the fundamental is really strong. So forget about the name, because they're trying to cater for 1 billion population. That's why they have all these sort of name. But the fundamental is really strong, really good.
It's a competition. That's why the names are such, you see.
They try to be exotic as they can.
Chairman, can I try to answer something?
Please, Dr. Foo.
I think you have correctly pointed out, it seems that, for example, in my university, the degree name seems to be a little bit different. Actually, what we have done is, in essence, again, a different country, different context. From Singapore context, employment outcomes is the key. So whatever that we launch, we want to look at the what the industry wants. Actually, that defines our PEOs, and then it translates to our student learning outcomes or the program outcomes. And then from there, we build towards that. So based on what they want, we build accordingly. So if you look from outcome-based education model, how we start with end in mind. The way that I think Washington Accord defined PEOs is at 5 years after graduation, what do you think your graduates will be? So we work backwards, and then we put down the SRO that we want, and we build into the scaffolding in terms of the learning. So from, I think from our Singapore Accreditation Agency perspective, they want to make sure that whatever thing that you put down, PEOs, SRO, you are actually following through the whole Washington process, the continuous improvement. You have all the other elements inside there. And if we can get through this, I think they are okay with us. And just to share a little bit, also from the way that we do the internship, it sounds a little bit strange. But for us, I think that's where we start to actually define opportunities for complex problems. Actually, when you, for me, I think about two things, complex or complicated. Complicated means you can still solve it in a very traditional way. Complex, you have multiple, different kind of requirements. So it's no longer just an engineering discipline. It can be a financial constraint, sustainability constraint. You throw it all out. And actually, you look at some of the problem statement that's given to our students when they go to industry. Actually, we are actually having a lot of those. And when they bring back into the capstone project, if we do it correctly, you can actually build into those, and you can actually use that as a justification that you are actually building those into the program. At least this kind of the way that I've been trying to do in Singapore. I'm not too sure about the other country, your bodies, but just to share a little bit of share notes with you.
Thank you, very good.
Thank you, Dr. Fu. Professor Suhaimi, would you like to?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm rather to use academic management system, regardless the model they adopted. Either OBE, there are many models, okay, around the world that we can use. Okay, the most important is how we establish the attributes. Okay, the attribute must be in line with mission and vision, at the same time fulfill the industrial requirements. Okay, then how we assess this attribute, and the result be used to improve the programs. So at the same time, we have to benchmark with other universities in order to have having the same strengths as offered by other universities. Okay, and meanwhile, we also need to fulfill the industrial requirements. So we need to have many meetings with our stakeholders in order to fill your requirements. I say at the same time, we what we call that, we need to show off our quality of graduate by several parameters. For example, employability rate. Okay, that one is struggled by many universities to achieve high employability rate. Right? That's why many innovation in curriculum, in many initiatives have been embedded in the structure in order to fulfill this what I call marketability and what I call employability. So it depends to the university how creative they are to ensure that their graduates are highly sought by industry. So then there are many ways in order to fulfill. It depends to how innovative they are. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I just want to add to what Suhaimi mentioned in Brunei, because we are going for the Engineering Council accreditation. So they in the new requirements which they have launched early this year, they clearly specify that even to the point that curriculum review, we need to have industry involvement in the curriculum review.
Okay, we are close to the end of this discussion. The organizers have been quite generous to give us ample time. We still have a few minutes, but in the meantime, Professor Kamaria has to move on because she has an urgent task. So thank you so much, Professor Kamaria, for your excellent contribution to this discussion.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me.
We'll
Bye-bye
see
all.
you on another occasion.
Sure. Stay safe. Stay safe.
Bye-bye.
We still have some time to go, I think. So I will come to Dr. Fu once again, because you also mentioned one important thing, probably that will be more relevant in the future, and that was living lab. You're involving your students in the living lab. How do you do that?
Okay, the way that for SIT, the way that we think about learning, we always want to have the authentic learning environment. Authentic means, at least for me, is as close as possible into the workplace. And when we try to design a facility, we're given the chance to actually build a whole university, and we want to make sure that whatever system that we put inside there, it just doesn't serve the function of the university. It also becomes a facility where learning can happen. So for example, our building services, students will be looking at our building management system. We have a microgrid in Singapore. That will be the first in Singapore. I mean, it is no big deal in a lot of countries, but for us, it's one of those in Singapore. And we do have electrical power engineers. So they will be the one who learn from the system. And when we graduate them, they will be the engineers that help to actually deploy those to the rest of Singapore. So we don't see our infrastructure as just infrastructure that serves the university, but it's also ability for them to learn. Our ICT students, will be actually looking at how to protect those infrastructures from cyber attacks. So when you start to actually look at what you have, instead of looking at the traditional confine where a laboratory is something that you try to distill from the real world, put in a very controlled environment, you learn the concepts, and then you move out again, try to apply in the real world. And if you can, I think I'm not too sure whether it will work. We try to use a system, which is our whole infrastructure, to be part of the learning system. And that's why we call it more like a living lab, where students can learn, the industry players can come in and actually work with your students. And that become a whole lot more authentic rather than a traditional laboratory confine. So we are just trying to create that kind of opportunity for our students so that when they go out, it's easier for them to actually connect the dots. So that's what we are trying to do. Hopefully that makes some sense.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fu. I think we are quite close to the end, but before we leave, I will give the panelists one more chance just to add your wisdom to this. Just in a couple of sentences, what will be your advice to the audience who are going to implement this OBE in the near future? Professor Ramesh first.
Well, I think most of the audience here, they are already into outcome-based. Of course, for newcomers, I'm sure that you will be very excited and trying to be very calculative in in every little things that you want to do. And I think that's pretty much normal because we all went through that same process. But I think at the end of the day, we must always remember what's the bigger picture and what we really want to achieve in adopting this Washington Accord and why we want to be part of the Washington Accord. So I think it's important to understand what Washington Accord wants the program to demonstrate. And we try to institute a framework that we are able to demonstrate without doubt that our graduates have fulfilled those requirements, are able to demonstrate achievement of those attributes. So I think that is most important. And there's a lot of model out there. Some will consider all the courses and they take averaging, and some may just do culminating, or some may just pick specialized the courses to decide. But I think at the end of the day, it's really down to the capability, because you have a lot of lecturers and a lot of all these lecturers, they have a different belief and support in terms of implementing outcome-based. I think in we also struggle when we started off with outcome-based. We were all over the place. Every department were trying to do something else. But eventually, we realized that the whole idea of this outcome-based is really to institute that quality improvement and to fulfill certain guidelines. As what I just want to echo back what Dr. Fu said, that we try to have a living lab. In we tried that, but I think for Dr. Fu's case, because SIT is relatively new, and when you started your program and when you develop the whole thing, you have already thought about the ecosystem that you want to put in place. But I think in like University Malaya and even in UTB, it started off with what the certain ministry wants, and they have established the university based on what at that time they think is important. And subsequently, we try to introduce avenues where we are able to bring in industry. Like in engineering in we have the industry collaboration, the industry center, the incubator, just like in Singapore, in NUS, in NTU, they have the incubator system. We did the same thing in as well. I think Hasib knows about that. And the whole idea is really to get industry to come in and set up their research lab and allow students to work and lecturers to work with the industry. So we try our best to incorporate those elements. But at the end of the day, the gap is still there, and we try our best to narrow the gap between what industry wants and what the university wants. Okay, so I think my final say is that yeah, I mean, this OBE thing, don't take it like it's a mandatory rule kind of thing. We should look at it from the perspective of continuous quality improvement, because we need to have a basis why we want to improve. And Washington Accord, from my experience, I think helps us to decide what sort of improvement that we want to do, because globally all the 21 signatories agree to this platform. So in a way, there is a basis for improvement. So that's my final take final say to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ramesh. Professor Shuaimi, your last words of wisdom.
Okay, thank you, Prof. I have nothing to say except engineering educations, outcome-based educations, and something relevant. One of what I call research discipline is one. Okay, you can put many effort, your creativity, your innovative in order to develop one robust system. Okay, please do explore. You can benchmark with many universities to extract any what I call best practices. Then you can apply it to your own programs. Okay, so don't put this as your burden, as Prof. Ramesh said, and regulation. It's about continuous quality improvements, and you can publish in many what I call impacted journals, what I call reputable journals, by sharing your best practices in this area. Okay, that's all. Okay,
thank you very much. I don't want to stop here. the discussion are so stimulating. I think we have Professor Wan Hamidun around us. Are you there? Would you like to add something?
He's the guru. He's the guru.
Yeah.
You gotta get him so to say some words.
We cannot leave it without listening to him.
Welcome,
Professor Wan Hamidun.
Please introduce yourself, Prof. Wan. In Malaysia,
don't be shy. Don't be shy, Prof. Wan.
Sorry, I'm not really.
Finally,
because I'm not dressed up for the occasion.
It's all right.
You're not dressed for the occasion, is it?
I was just trying to keep quiet.
But we will not let you keep quiet.
I was listening with. I was listening attentively to what the panelists were saying. Yeah, I'm also learning. Anyway,
any tips or not? Any tips for the members?
Final tips.
You all said it. You've said it all. Actually. Yeah. I don't have anything to say.
All right. I think we are happy to see you there. So thank you all very much. I think it has been a very stimulating session personally for me, and I hope for the audience also. I learned a lot of things here, and especially we have experience from at least 3 different countries now. I think Singapore, Malaysia, and Australia. And I hope this discussion will continue. And Brunei, of course, and Brunei, 4 different countries in this region. Because when I see Ramesh, I don't recall Brunei. I recall Kuala Lumpur, of course.
I'm still part of UM.
Yeah. So it has been a real pleasure for me personally, I think, and I was given a lot of support by the organizers, particularly Dr. El Sheikh has been working, and he has to work again for this reportership, and also Mr. Zabir has been helping me a lot, and also all other people around me. I have to thank all of them. And with that, let me say goodbye to you and hope to see you again next time. Have a safe, nice day.
Thank you.
And housekeeping announcement. Tomorrow we will start at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Prof. Hazim. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamualaikum.